awesome. Look at that inside. Looks absolutely amazing. Today I'm going to show you how to make a sourdough bread. Yummy. I love sourdough bread. It's probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, breads to make and eat. It is awesome. If you don't already have a sourdough starter, make sure to check out my video that I posted a while ago on how to make your own sourdough starter. If you already have your own sourdough starter, then fantastic. And so I'm going to take this little cup here, glass, and I'm going to put it on my scale and zero it out. And then I want to measure 25 grams of my starter and put it right in this glass. There we go, perfect. And now I'm going to zero this out. And now I'm going to add 20 grams of white bread flour, and this is 12.7% protein. Perfect. 20 grams of that. I'm going to zero that out. And then I want to do 20 grams of whole wheat flour, and this is a 13.2% protein. Perfect. Now I'm going to zero this out, and then I'm going to do 40 grams, so equal. We had 40 grams total of flour, and now I want to do 40 grams of water, and this water temp is right around 85 degrees Fahrenheit, which is somewhere around like 28 Celsius, somewhere around there. Now I'm going to pour in 40 grams. And I'm just going to mix this really well. And you want to make sure to get down in there and get that sourdough starter that's in there. And you want to make sure that there's no dry bits at all of flour. And I want to make sure the sides are scraped so I can see the level of the starter. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a rubber band on this glass right at the level of where the starter is right now, because we want this to at least double in size, and usually by 8 hours to 10 hours it'll raise up and double in size. There'll be a bunch of bubbles, and then we can do the float test to make sure it's ready to go. And so I put the rubber band on there just to show what the current level is of the sourdough starter. I'm just going to cover this. You can cover it with like plastic wrap loosely. I just have this little lid that goes right on like this, and I'm going to let this sit overnight just on the counter. All right, and then I can start the rest of the bread process in the morning. We'll see you in the morning. Good morning. It's about 8 a.m. the next day. Time to proceed to the next step. But before we do that, I want to make a few points. First, if you store your starter in the refrigerator, take the starter out a day or two before you want to use it and feed it a few times, discard, feed, discard, until you want to use it, and then proceed with last night's step. Also, don't expect your first loaf or 2 or 3 or 4 that you make of sourdough to turn out perfectly. Sourdough, really cool thing about sourdough is it turns out differently every single time, and sometimes just things happen and it doesn't turn out quite how you want it. Maybe it turns out kind of flat like a pancake. Maybe there's enormous holes in the center. But if you follow these steps, if it doesn't turn out quite exactly how you want it, it's still going to taste really good, and it'll be a great learning experience. And just as you keep making sourdough, it's going to get better and better, and it's such a fun process. For me, it's kind of addicting making sourdough. All right, and first what we're going to do is the AUTOLYSE step, and that just means we're going to mix only the water and the flour together and let it rest for 45 minutes to an hour. And then we will add the starter, the remaining water and salt, okay? And that's what AUTOLYSE does, and it just helps hydrate the flour and get the gluten started, and it just helps produce a better bread in the end. Now, I've made it plenty of times without doing the AUTOLYSE, where I just mix all the ingredients together, and it works and it still tastes great, but this extra step takes it up a notch, okay? And I want to measure out 325 grams of water. I'm going to be making a 70% hydration sourdough. And I'm just doing that ratio because it's a little easier to work with. It'll be easier for you to work with. More advanced recipes will have a little higher hydration level, but the dough is a lot more sticky and harder to work with. So I wanted to do a lower hydration for you because I think you'll have an easier time with it. And the hydration just means the ratio of water to flour, okay? I'm gonna zero this out and add 50 grams of whole wheat flour. There we go. And then I'm gonna use 450 grams of white, and that's gonna give me one loaf that is based off of 500 grams. I always just make one loaf because I make it all the time, but you may wanna make 2 loaves. But I encourage you the first time you make sourdough just to make 1 loaf because things can go wrong, and then that way you're not using as many ingredients. But then as you go forward, you may wanna make 2 loaves at a time. All right, now that that's done, we want to mix it. And you can come in here with your hands. You can use like a dough mixer, it's like a dough whisk. I'm just gonna use a spoon and just mix this in and then switch over to my hands. And we wanna get all that dry flour incorporated with this dough. And it's gonna be like a shaggy mess. Okay, I'm gonna come in here now with my hands, very clean hands. Always use clean hands. And we're gonna kind of knead it a little bit in here. All right, so then I'm gonna just kind of push it down like this. And now what I wanna do is I'm going to cover this, and I have a little fancy dough proofer here, and I'm gonna put my dough in there. I love this dough proofer by Broden Taylor. I can just set the temperature to exactly what I want, which the optimal temp is right around between 78 and 82 degrees. And so if your house is really cold, then a dough proofer works wonders. Otherwise, you can still do it at room temperature, it just takes longer. And so I like this dough proofer. Because I have it, I'm gonna use it. You can also put the dough in like the oven and just put it on warm for just a few seconds, just to heat it up a little bit, and then put some water in there in in a little oven-safe bowl. But make sure it's not hot because you don't want to bake the bread. You don't want to bake the dough, okay? And so I'm just going to put this in the dough proofer, and we're going to let it sit for about 1 hour to AUTOLYSE. And this is the AUTOLYSE step, and then we'll proceed from there. Also down below in the description, I'll put timestamps with these different steps, so you can go straight to one of the steps if you need to rewatch something. All right, we'll see you in a bit. It's been about an hour for the AUTOLYSE phase, and now it's time to move on to the next step. I'm going to measure out 25 grams of water, and that will give us the rest of the water that we need. And now I want to measure out the salt, which is 10 grams of salt. Zero this out, and that gives us the go-to ratio, which is 2% of salt to flour. And I am using a fine sea salt. Okay, and then I will just come in here and give this a good mix. And again, I use filtered water. Perfect. And now the starter. We mixed this last night, and it's super nice and bubbly on the top, and it's at least doubled in size. I know it's ready to go. If you want to, you can use the float test method and just scoop out a little bit and put it in some water, and if it floats, it's ready to go. I know this is ready to go. And then I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna take these little kitchen towel off of my dough, and it's not really gonna look like anything. It'll probably be a little bit stretchy, which is good. And now we want to add in the sourdough starter, and this should be just right around 100 grams. I want to also add in this water and salt. And I kind of use my finger just because the salt kind of gets stuck to the glass a little bit. And then we're just going to come in here with clean hands, and we're going to just kind of mix this all together. Okay? And I just kind of grab it, pinch it, push it down, kind of like we're kneading. Because we want to get this starter mixed in really well with this dough. And we're going to sit here and mix it for 3 to 4 minutes. Eventually, as you're mixing, you're going to just notice that it gets a little bit more firm, still a little bit wet, but more firm. And it just kind of stays together really well when you push down into it. Once we have introduced the starter to the dough, we have entered into the bulk fermentation phase. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this again, and I'm going to put it back in my dough proofer, and I'm going to let this rest for 30 minutes. 30 minutes has been up, and now we're going to start the first stretch and fold, also known as a turn. I'm going to take one hand, my right hand, and just dip it in some water just so it keeps the dough from sticking. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take my hand and go underneath this side of the dough and just pull it up, be nice and stretchy, and fold it over. And then I'm going to do this 3 or 4, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, until the dough feels nice and like kind of comes together and feels more firm, and it's a little bit harder to stretch. And then I'm just going to turn that bowl, grab that corner, stretch and fold it over, turn. You don't want to pull too hard. You don't want to tear the dough. And then now I'm just going to take this and kind of just turn it around and flip it over a little bit. And then now I can cover it and put it back in the proofer, or if you don't have a proofer, you'll just cover it and you'll let it sit for 30 more minutes. And that was the first turn, or the first series of stretch and folds. Another 30 minutes is up. Time for the second series of stretch and folds or turns. And there you go, that's all there is to it. I'm going to cover it again and let it rest for 30 minutes in my proofer. 30 minutes has been up. Time for the third stretch and fold or turns. And then there we go. Cover it and let it sit for another 30 minutes. All right, another 30 minutes have passed. Time for another stretch and fold or turn. Okay, perfect. Again, we're gonna rest it for 30 more minutes. All right, another 30 minutes is up. Time to do a series of coil folds. And I'm just gonna dampen both hands this time. And the reason why we do this is because it's a little bit more gentle than just pulling and stretching. And I'm going to come in here and just go underneath it. And just kind of scrape off the bottom a little bit. Just kind of pull it up and then just fold it over like that. And then give it a turn. And then I'll do the same thing. And you'll probably see a lot of bubbles forming. And I don't need to do much, just a couple of them right there. Now I'm going to cover this and let it sit again for 30 minutes. Another 30 minutes is up. And this is the last 30 minutes that we had to wait for. And I'm going to do just one more set of coil folds on this dough. There's nice bubbles forming everywhere. It's awesome. I'm going to come over underneath and just gently pull up and just pull it away from the bowl here a little bit. Just fold it over. Go underneath, just let it stretch down. And now I'm going to just let this rest covered again. I'm going to put it back in my proofer and we're going to let it go for about an hour to an hour and a half. Why are we doing all these turns and folds and stretches and letting it ferment for so long? Because we are building strength to the dough, we are building volume, and we are building flavor. All right, we've kind of concluded the bulk fermentation. What we're going to do now is we're going to do the first shaping. And at this point, if you doubled the recipe to make 2 loaves, you're also going to divide the dough into 2 loaves at this point. And so what I want to do is I want to grab a little bit of my flour, just a little bit of this bread flour here, and put it on my counter here. It's not a ton. Don't want a whole lot of flour, just a little bit here. just to keep this dough from sticking. And then I'm going to come in and grab my dough, and you can use a dough scraper if you want to get the dough out, but it should come out fairly easy here. And then we want to kind of spread it apart a little bit into a rectangle. And then I'm going to take the side closest to me and just fold it over and stretch. Kind of like in like an envelope. And then pull this in and stretch like this. And then I'm just going to take this, put my thumbs like right here, and just turn it, stretch it, and roll a little bit. We're not manhandling the dough very much. We're being very careful because we don't want to lose all that nice air that we developed. Just roll that up like that. And then with your hands, you can just kind of cup it and shape it like this. And we're going to get some tension. We want to build tension in the dough. Or you can use a bench scraper like this. A dough scraper will also work to build tension, but to use the scraper, and this is very important, especially if you're doing a higher hydration dough, it's going to be a little bit harder to work with. Right now, I can already tell that I don't really necessarily need my bench scraper because this dough is not super sticky. But you'll take the scraper and go underneath and then pull towards you like this. Or you can just come in here with your hands and pull it in toward you. Okay. And there we go. That is the first shaping. And now I'm just going to dust a little bit of the top with some flour. Not too much, just a little bit of flour here. And then I'm going to cover it with this damp cloth. And we'll just let this hang out for about 30 minutes. I'm back. What we just did, the first shaping and allowing it to rest here on the counter, that is called the bench rest. Now when we remove this, we want to see that it hasn't flattened out completely into a pancake. If it did, you need to shape it again. It probably just needs a little bit more fermenting time. And this is really great. It went a little bit out, but it still mounted and still kept most of its shape, which is fantastic. And now it's time to do the final shaping. Again, I'm going to take a little bit of flour here, not a ton. Just put it on the top, loosely here. I'm going to take my bench scraper and go underneath the dough and then plop it on the flour side down. And it should feel nice and soft and airy, the dough. And I'm just going to kind of stretch it out just a little bit, not too much. I don't want to ruin the dough here. And just into that same kind of a little bit of a rectangle here. And then again, I'm going to take this side and stretch and go to the middle. Dust off any excess flour here. And then I'm going to take this side and go towards me. And then, so that sticky side kind of goes on the seam. And then I'm going to shape this into what we call a boule, B-O-U-L-E. And I'm going to take this flap right here, I'm going to stretch it and go down. And then I'm going to curl this and go in like this. Okay. And then I'm just going to roll it up gently here. And then you can take this side and kind of go down with it. Again, this side, you can kind of take this and go down with it if you want to get kind of rid of that look right there. Sometimes when it bakes, it'll show that. And then, again, take the bench scraper, go around. And we're using kind of the stickiness, inherent stickiness of the bottom of that dough, along with our counter here, to get more tension in here, in our dough. And all these little bubbles that you can see on the top, these are all good signs, and you can pinch those away if you want. not really necessary. And you can come in here with your hands, go underneath and pull, and the dough's just gonna feel nice and light and amazing here. And now it's time to use our banneton. I have a round banneton here, and that's what I'm going to use. And I dust the inside with rice flour. If you don't have a banneton and don't want to buy one, then just take a bowl and then take your kitchen towel, a dry kitchen towel, and then heavily flour that. That way the dough's not going to stick. So I really like the bannetons. These are pretty cheap. And then I'm going to take some rice flour, and we will just heavily dust the top of this, and then right into the banneton we go. And then we'll take some more of this rice flour, and then we'll just heavily go on the sides here. So when this dough expands, it's not going to stick. There we go. Now there's a couple of things that we can do. We have entered the final rise. Now you can do this a couple of ways. If it's late at night, what you can do is you can just put this in the refrigerator and let it do its final rise slowly overnight, and then you can bake it off in the morning. Or what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to let this do the final rise in my dough proofer, and then let it go for about 4 hours, and then I will bake it. And it should rise pretty well, and almost probably 30 to 40% in volume will raise. And what's going to do it is going to further develop flavor. So there's a lot of options on when you can do this final step. All right, so I'm going to cover this and put it in my proofer, and we'll come back when we're ready to bake it. All right, it's been about 4 hours, and I'm going to check the dough, and look at that, it's risen beautifully. And when you shake it, it'll be kind of jiggly. That is perfect. It's a great sign. And if you press on it like with your thumb or finger, the indentation will come back really, really slowly, and it'll still leave that mark. That's a great sign that it is ready to go, well proofed and fermented. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to put this in the freezer. Now if you were doing the rise of this in the refrigerator for the 12 hours or 16 hours or whatever, then you won't need to do this freezer step. I'm going to put this in the freezer for about 30 minutes while the Dutch oven is heating up. I'm going to take my Dutch oven. I just have this Lodge combo cooker. It's really great. You can also use an enameled Dutch oven. I have 2 of those, and I've used those several times for this sourdough as well. I just really like this one. So I'm going to put this in the oven and let it heat up, again at 500 degrees Fahrenheit or 260 Celsius for 30 minutes. So into the freezer this goes, 30 minutes, and then into the oven, the cast iron combo cooker goes for 30 minutes. Again, 500 degrees Fahrenheit, 260 Celsius. All right, it's been 30 minutes and my combo cooker is nice and hot. The oven is preheated. And now I'm going to take my dough out of the freezer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a little bit of rice flour here, and I lay down a piece of parchment paper. Now you don't have to use parchment paper. You can bake the loaf right on the bottom of your combo cooker. It's just easier to get it in and out with parchment paper. And then I'm going to just take this and go right down with it like that. It looks fantastic. It's nice and lots of volume to it. It looks great. And now we need to score it. And the reason why you score the dough is that's going to allow a place for the dough to rise while it bakes, and it kind of gives it a spot to expand. If you don't score it, it is going to expand, but it might go all different places and misshape the dough. So I'm going to do a classic like a plus sign on here, and I'm going to start at the bottom here, and I want to do a nice even cut and go down about 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch. And when the dough is chilled, it makes it easier to cut. And I am using a lame. It's just a razor blade on a little handle. It works great. And then I'm going to go this way now. And that's fantastic. That's gonna be great, and it's gonna expand out of that. Perfect. Now I need to grab the Dutch oven. Now you need to use oven mitts for this. It's super hot, so be very careful. Okay, and so what I will do is I'm gonna grab this dough here. And lay it right in the Dutch oven. And then take the pot, which is the lid now for this purpose, and make sure to get it on completely. You don't want there to be any gaps. So make sure it's on there correctly. And then back into the oven it goes, and then we're gonna reduce the temperature to 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and then bake it for 20 minutes with this lid on. 20 minutes is up, time for the big reveal. Make sure you're wearing your oven mitts. And I'm gonna we don't wanna leave this too much. Just take this lid off. Yes, look at that. Awesome. Great oven spring. Put this back in here. And then I'm going to bake it for another 20 to 30 minutes until I get a nice dark crust onto that step. And when it comes out of the oven, it'll look something like this. Now, if you don't want it as dark, then just remove it at around the 20-minute mark. I like a dark crust. It just adds a nice depth of flavor to the bread. All right, and now I'm going to just grab the parchment paper here and lift out the bread and place it on that wire rack and just let it cool for about an hour. And then we'll cut into it and see how nice it looks on the inside. All right, time to cut into this. Looks absolutely amazing. Awesome. Look at that inside. Looks absolutely amazing. I'm gonna slice off a piece and taste it. Yeah. It's so awesome. Normally I would toast it and put some butter and a little bit of salt on it, but I'm gonna eat it just like this. That is so, so amazing. Nice and crusty on the outside, soft on the inside, not incredibly sour on the inside. It's just a really nice flavor. Awesome. If you haven't tried sourdough at home, try this recipe and let me know what you think. I'm Matt Taylor. This has been another episode of In the Kitchen with Matt. Thank you for joining me. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or requests, put them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thumbs up, down the corner, press it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos. Take care. Time for me to dive into this some more. Oh yeah.